Good morning. It's been a couple of days since the last video that either one of us has shot, and some stuff has changed once again in terms of this virus. First and foremost, cases are still exploding throughout the US. The pictures I'm seeing coming out of New York are very disturbing. They're already running out of medical devices, medical facilities, and they're basically bringing in help from all over the place. I'm hearing stories of them pulling medical students that are seniors, almost ready to graduate, pulling them out of school early to come help out on the lines in exchange for an early graduation. I mean, all kinds of stories of people trying to help, soliciting volunteers to come help in whatever way they can, because in New York City, I'm not sure the exact numbers in New York, but it's in the tens of thousands of people that are infected, and that city is quickly becoming overwhelmed. And what we're seeing happening is people are fleeing New York, those that can, and are spreading out all over the country. And unfortunately, what that's going to do is it's going to end up seeding the virus all over the country, wherever these New Yorkers are gone. I've already know that some have gone up to Maine, where a lot of New Yorkers have vacation homes up there along the coast, because New York cars have been seen along the coast of Maine when they normally don't see them at all this time of year. Maine is still largely shut down to tourism until usually the 1st of May before they start getting things going again, or at the very earliest mid-April. But to see people streaming into Maine is quite something, because people are just trying to find anywhere to be but New York at this point, because the virus is basically taken over New York. But unfortunately, of the thousands of people that are leaving New York City and trying to get out of there, a portion of those people are going to be infected, and they're going to end up seeding the virus in the towns that they happen to land. Locally, we're seeing a slow shutdown of our area. Obviously, I've mentioned that I live in the Raleigh-Durham area, and my commute takes me over near Greensboro. In the past couple of days, we've seen a slow shutdown county by county here in the state of North Carolina, because the virus is really only affecting the larger metropolitan areas right now. The first one we saw was Mecklenburg County, which is the county that Charlotte is located in. That county went into a shelter-in-place mode a few days ago, and then a couple of days ago, Durham County announced that they were going to go into a shelter-in-place mode, and then one by one, followed by Wake County, Guilford County. Wake County is where Raleigh's in. Durham County obviously is where Durham is located. Guilford County is where Greensboro is located, and Winston-Salem is also going into a shelter-in-place mode. And then lastly, the county I live in, which is Orange County, and that's the county that Chapel Hill, North Carolina is located in. That county also announced that starting this Friday, which is tomorrow as I record this, that county is also going to be in a shelter-in-place mode. So one by one, all the big metropolitan areas in North Carolina are all shutting down as the coronavirus is basically, it's become clear that there's community spread within these areas, and this thing spreads like crazy. I think it spreads faster than even the officials think it does at this point. I'm just convinced of that at this point, because I've been following it closely, and the stories I'm seeing of people that have gotten it, no idea how they got it. They don't travel, they don't go anywhere, and they just happen to be out in the community, and a few days later they came home with the they came down with the virus. I think it's here, and I'm trying to take all the precautions I can. I avoid people as much as possible. It's hard to avoid other team members, but well, traffic is noticeably lighter now. It's finally starting to dwindle down. Right now it's a little bit before 9 a.m. and this road would normally be packed, but traffic is definitely noticeably lighter, so people are definitely taking the stay-at-home requests seriously. But seeing all the pictures in New York should be sending a warning to all Americans around the country. Because what we see in New York is not going to be just happening in New York. Eventually it's going to happen to all of the big cities in our area. It's just a matter of time. Right now, New York, the stories coming out of New York sound a lot like the stories that were coming out of Italy a couple of weeks ago, where the hospitals are completely overwhelmed. There's not enough beds for everybody. There's not enough ventilators for everybody, and they're having to make choices on who lives and who dies. And if they were completely prepared based on what they saw in China and some of the other countries that first had to deal with it, it could have been prevented. And the most frustrating part for me is seeing the pictures coming out of New York. We're essentially the last part of the world that is having to deal with this virus. This virus has been spreading, coming out of China and then spreading around the world. So because we're on the other side of the world from where China is, we're basically the last part of the world that has to deal with this thing. So we had the luxury of essentially having a crystal ball of seeing what was happening to other countries in the world dealing with this, and we knew that we would have to do the same thing here. And as it turns out, the countries that did the best job at squashing it were the countries that did all the right things. Japan, Singapore, South Korea, they jumped on this virus early. They had widespread testing for everybody who even remotely could have potentially been a carrier. They had plenty of tests for everybody. They jumped on it, they tackled it, and when their governments issued a shelter-in-place order, everybody followed it. And those countries that I mentioned were able to bend the curve fairly early and without having too many casualties. And the countries that mocked it, dismissed it, claimed that the press was overblowing it, countries like Iran, Spain, Italy, and now appears to be the United States, are going to end up being the countries that are worst hit by it. And I still see and hear a bunch of Americans that I come in contact with every day that are dismissing this thing and saying it's no big deal, it's just a common cold. Meanwhile, I'm hearing stories of families that are losing multiple members to this thing just because of our blasé, careless attitude towards it. And it's frustrating because it could have been prevented. And now we're having to deal with the consequences of not preparing for this properly. We had time, we squandered our time. Now this thing is on our doorstep. It's invading our country, essentially through the port of New York. Ironically, if you know the history of our country, why that's ironic. We're going to have to deal with it one by one. We're not all going to have to deal with it at the same time. The outbreak curve is going to have different timing throughout the country in different places. Right now, New York is first. It appears that New Orleans is next, and the greater Louisiana area. Florida seems to be following soon behind Louisiana. And one by one, this thing's going to invade our big cities and then eventually spread out into the country's side. Meanwhile, we still got people going out, having birthday parties. We had yesterday at our store, we had 2 different cakes that were at least a half a sheet, which feeds 30 or more people, by the way. We had 1 full sheet, which feeds up to 60 people, as many as 90 people if you cut the pieces small enough. And yesterday I witnessed a former employee who hasn't been in the store in quite some time come in, and we have an elderly gentleman that works on our front end as a bagger. He's easily in his, I'm not sure how old he is, but he's easily into his 70s, if not 80s. And this former employee, which, if I remember correctly, has roots in New York City, she came up to him and gave him a great big hug. I couldn't believe it. I just couldn't believe the ignorance of this person to do that. Especially knowing if she's from the New York area. Who knows how recently she was up there visiting family. And she comes down and hugs a person that more than likely is right in the wheelhouse of this particular disease. This thing is killing off the elderly, the immunocompromised. I'm not sure about his health status. Obviously he's working, so he's not too unhealthy, but the age of him puts a lot of us at concern. And she just ran right up to him, gave him a great big hug, as if she was hugging her grandfather that she hasn't seen in 10 years. I couldn't believe it. So if we as Americans don't get a grip with reality, and until we decide to tackle this thing by all at one time separating ourselves for a good month, unfortunately, it's going to take that long, until we decide unilaterally as a country with total buy-in by all members of the population, not just the ones that are vulnerable, this thing is going to continue to spread throughout the country, and we're going to see scenes like we're seeing in New York play out all over the country for the next several months. All because Americans don't want to be told what to do and where to go for a very short period of time. It's not like they're asking us to stay at home permanently. They're asking us to stay at home, stay away from each other for a very, very short period of time in the grand scheme of things. And the selfishness of Americans who think the world revolves around them and that the rules don't apply to them is going to get a lot of people killed. And unfortunately, it could be members of their own family. I, for one, don't want to live with the guilt of having possibly killed family members or anyone that I know. So until this thing is over, I'm playing by the rules. Our family members are playing by the rules. My wife just sent me a text. Her restaurant that she works at has been doing takeout only for the last couple of weeks. And thanks to the bailout that our government just put in place, that was the other thing that's happened since the last video. The Senate has voted to pass a huge $2 trillion bailout to help not only Americans but businesses alike. And it looks like the restaurant that she works for will be able to take part in that bailout, which will allow them to shut down completely and continue to pay their employees while they're at it. And my wife just texted me they're going to be shutting down. I think Sunday, they said, is their last day, and they're going to be shutting down until May 1st. And who knows, it could be longer. If us Americans don't do what they're asking us to do, it's not like they're asking us to go off and fight a war. They're asking us to stay home and don't interact with people outside your home. That's all they're asking us to do. But no, Americans have the attitude, oh, the government's not going to tell me what to do. I'm going to do whatever I want. At first, I had that attitude as well, because it was messing with my planned vacation. But I've since seen the light. I realize now what needs to be done, but I realized it early on in the process, long before most Americans. There's still Americans that haven't realized what has to be done. Anyway, I'm at work. I'm parking the car now, so I gotta go ahead and end this video. Maybe I'll have more to say on my way home tonight, but it'll be dark because I'm working at until 8 o'clock tonight, so it'll likely be dark. So anyway, I will gonna end this video, go get to work, and try not to hurt anybody. All right, talk to you later. Bye.